Hey, y'all, welcome back to another episode of Well Lit Paths. In Psalm 55, David's dealing with a situation in his life and gives us some ways we can address trials in our lives. But first, how's your week? Ain't God good to give us so many blessings? Undeserving. That's what we are. We ought to thank Him, love and praise Him. A little more today and a whole lot more tomorrow. You know, it can only be providential that God kind of gave me a testimony to share with y'all this week that kind of fits the psalm that we're in. If you listen to our other podcast, you'll hear this twice, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. Tuesday night, I had planned to go to Walmart, but I got doing other things and didn't. I needed to pick up like some coffee from my office Keurig at work. So Wednesday morning, I head off to work, and around 9, I decided to finally go, make that run and do that. So I drive to Walmart, and as I put the car in park, it kind of sputters and dies. No need to panic. Let's check it out. Battery, maybe? I thought to myself as I popped the hood. And sure enough, there's a loose cable in the negative terminal. No worries though, right? It's Wally World. I'll grab a crescent wrench and the other stuff that I needed for the office and get back to it. So I get what I need. I come outside and I tighten that bolt down and get in the car and punch the ignition switch. Sputter. No dice. So I text Crystal. She shows up about 15 minutes later with jumper cables. Car starts right up with the jump and then dies off slowly and shuts off. So I yank the battery out. I'm at Walmart. They have this stuff. I walk inside. They have the battery I need. And I notice the battery says that it has a 3-year warranty. So I wonder if the one that I pulled out of the car has the same. I noticed that the sticker says that it's from 2/22, so February of 2022, and wouldn't you know it, it's the same brand that Walmart carries. So I ask the person at the counter if they can check the warranty. So they check everything, and they promptly exchange my trash battery for a new one, and have a nice day, sir. So I walk out, I pop the new battery in, and I have not had an issue with the car since. And as I kiss Crystal goodbye, she says, kind of nice this happened at Walmart and not when you left for work today. And I look at her and immediately I feel a little ashamed. It dawns on me and a smile starts on my face. Ain't God good? I say to her more as a statement instead of a question. And that feeling's kind of followed me throughout the entire week. In a situation where I was frustrated and exasperated because I was gone longer from work than I wanted to be, and oh, what an inconvenience in my busy little life. God had used a stupid battery and my awesome wife to remind me of how good He is. It could have happened on the side of the road. It could have happened on the highway and caused an accident. There's so many other ways it could have gone that would have been much worse than the situation I found myself in. I mean, Crystal could have been working that day. And what I had done in the moment was look at my feelings first. Frustration. I don't have time for this. Escape. I wish this wouldn't have happened. Why can't I just own a car that I would never have to worry about this happening? I would love the peace of mind that I feel I could get from a 2024 vehicle instead of a 2013 vehicle. The why me? Caught up in the circumstances, I was failing to see how God worked the circumstances in a way that His glory was being made known. So how could I have handled it differently? Well, immediately when the car died, my first thought was, I got this. It's just a car thing. When my first thought should have been, Lord, I don't know how you're working, but thank you for previous experience in working on cars. And I sure could use your help in finding a resolution. And when my first attempt didn't bear fruit, instead of frustration, Lord, give me insight to see the problem and trust you can help me in this moment. Thank you that Crystal was not at work and can make it here to help. And, I could continue, but you get the picture. This was a small thing in my life that God worked through despite my desire to manage it myself and solution it myself. He works on our behalf even when we don't ask. But think of how much more he'd work if we would simply trust him to do what he says he'll do. And maybe, just maybe, the reason we struggle to trust him in the big things is because we fail so many times to trust him in the small things, the car things, the lawnmower things, the water heater things. He's not just a God of big things. If he cares to know all of the hairs on my head, which, if you know me, is a very small thing, then he cares about all the small things that go on in my life. He wants to get the glory in the outcome. Even when the outcome isn't optimal, I can give him the glory that I wasn't in it alone. Here in our psalm, David was dealing with a much bigger issue than his car breaking down. Rebellion was running wild in the kingdom, led by his son Absalom, and his trusted counselor, Ahithophel, had betrayed him and joined the other side's cause. Betrayed, frustrated, surrounded by circumstances beyond his control, he breaks down for us how he handled it and the conclusion that he comes to. Psalm 55, beginning in verse 1. Give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not thyself from my supplication. Attend unto me and hear me. I mourn in my complaint and make a noise because of the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they cast iniquity upon me, and in wrath they hate me. My heart is sore pained within me, and the terrors of death are fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling are come upon me, and horror hath overwhelmed me. And I said, oh, that I had the wings like a dove, for then would I fly away and be at rest. Lo, then would I wander off and remain in the wilderness. Selah. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. Destroy, O Lord, and divide their tongues, for I've seen violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go about it upon the walls thereof. Mischief also and sorrow are in the midst of it. Wickedness is in the midst thereof. Deceit and guile depart not from her streets. For it was not an enemy that reproached me, then could I have borne it. Neither was it he that hated me that did magnify himself against me, then would I have hid myself from him. But it was thou, a man mine equal, my guide, and mine acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together, and walked unto the house of God in company. Let death seize upon them, and let them go down quick into hell, for wickedness is in their dwelling and among them. As for me, I will call upon God. The Lord shall save me. Evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud. He shall hear my voice. He hath delivered my soul in peace from the battle that was against me, for there were many with me. God shall hear and afflict them, even he that abideth of old, Selah. Because they have no changes, therefore they fear not God. He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He hath broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. But thou, O God, shalt bring them down into the pit of destruction. Bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in thee. How do we feel when we find ourselves in a circumstance, in a trial? I mean, I know how I feel. My first thought always seems to be, really, Lord? And if we're honest, I mean, that's kind of how we all react. We forget that he doesn't work bad on our behalf. He doesn't plunge us into a trial for us to struggle through. The fact is, we live in a sinful world. Everything he meant for us to never experience, we're experiencing as we live and walk on this earth. All the pain never meant for us, we're subject to. All the grief and sadness never meant for us, we may experience. The breaking down of our bodies, the breaking down of everything around us as it ages, the landscape, the buildings, the vehicles, none of that was ever meant for us. Death and loss never meant for us. Betrayal and shame were never meant for us. But as we live and walk here on this planet in the small blink of time that we're given, we're subject to all of these feelings and circumstances. And in many ways, they hold sway over our lives. Well, why do we work so hard to make more money and have nicer things? We don't like the feeling of insecurity. So we build wealth to mitigate and dampen that feeling of uncertainty within us. We don't like feeling alone. Well, okay, most of us don't like it. Yeah, introverts, I'm talking to you. So we make friends. Sometimes compromise to keep friends. And we fail under the weight of peer pressure. So many of the things we do either protect or enhance our feelings. When we find ourselves in a trial, everything is enhanced by that feeling of the loss of control. How do I make this better? How do I get to the other side of this as quickly as possible? Immediately, worry, fear, feelings of betrayal, anger, loss of hope, anxiety, all of these and so much more can well up inside of us. And we think of how we can make these feelings go away as quickly as possible. Regain control. Make a plan to overcome the situation. Fix whatever it is that's broken. Find the person responsible that put you here. If you could just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's the American way. Do it yourself. Don't get help. You know, there's an entire network on television dedicated to showing people how we don't need to rely on anyone else. Yet, as we watch it, we sit there relying on those TV experts to tell us and affirm for us that we're capable of what we're capable of without all of their experience and expertise, without their years of training and trial and error, without the benefit of their mistakes. And we look around and we begin to be jealous of those who don't seem to struggle. And there come our feelings again. Look, no one else is struggling like me. And, you know, I'll take an aside here real quick to plead with everyone not to fall into the trap that we see in a lot of churches where everyone is just constantly like, everything's fine, we're all fine, every time we walk into the church building or see a fellow church member. You know, it's okay not to be fine as a Christian. We're human. We're going to struggle. We're going to deal with trials in our lives. We don't have to put on a face and be fine all the time. And sometimes we may actually serve the brethren better by letting them see our struggle, by not putting on a face, by letting them see how we're feeling, because they may be able to empathize with us and help us through those feelings. Or by voicing that we're not fine, we can find counsel in them because they're not fine either. I don't want us to think that feelings are bad. You know, my wife Crystal jokes that sometimes I'm a robot, that I have this uncanny ability to just turn off a switch when things need to happen and simply kind of allow the logical side of my brain to take control. And there's some truth to that. And it may be an asset or it may be a fault. But the reality is that feelings aren't bad. They're what allow us to love. God himself expresses the entire range of emotion in the Bible, and he identifies himself as love. He created us with feelings. But we've got to realize that our feelings have been corrupted by sin. When we give in to our feelings and allow them to control us, we make them the God we worship. And we can be guilty of this in our trials. We can succumb to them wholly, or we can want to escape them. And this is another trap we fall into. Instead of staying there and swimming in our despair and anger, we may simply check out. Avoidance will make the problem go away. You know, in my personal life, I used to be, and in some ways I still am, really good at this. Let's just escape. This kind of thought process has broken many marriages. It's too hard to work on. I've just been hurt by my spouse so much that I can't take it anymore. Well, my spouse doesn't feel the same way that I do. I feel trapped in this marriage. I don't feel like you love me anymore. I'm just not sure about our future together. I feel neglected and unloved, and I just don't want to feel like that anymore. And we don't like these feelings. We want to escape them. We want to get away. And while it's true that some marriages just can't be resolved and a feeling of danger should never be ignored, marriages that end don't typically end because of those types of serious issues. They usually end because we want to escape the feelings we have and chase a feeling we want. I want to be loved this way. I want to feel like that. I want someone who makes me feel X, Y, or Z. We escape from and we escape to. And that's just one example. And we can do it in our jobs. We feel unfulfilled or underpaid, so we chase something more secure, better hours, better pay. Why would God not want us to have better, make better? Do we ever ask in those moments, is God providing for me where I'm at? Is God giving me opportunities to witness where I'm at? And if we're honest, do we ever look to make more so that we can tithe more? Give more? Spend more time in God's service? The escapes that we concoct are self-centered. I just need to get away from it all, instead of, I just need to pull away and spend more time with my Father. So we construct our own safe places. You know, in our home, we may retreat to a game room or an office rather than deal with a rebellious child. We come home from work to our craft room or to the garage and then go straight to bed to avoid our spouse. Or we stop going to church because the pastor is preaching at us too hard. Or we only go on Wednesday nights because then so-and-so isn't there and they did some wrong to me. Or we run to church to avoid family issues. We avoid our genetic families and spend time only with church family because it's our safe place. And don't get me wrong, church should be a safe place, but not a place we go to hide. It should be a place we go to regroup, to plan tactics, to arm ourselves for the battle, to refresh. When we go and hide without addressing the problem doesn't just go away. It waits for us. It sits in a window with some high-powered binoculars and waits for us to come back around the shadow of the mountain we've gone to hide behind. And we batten down the hatches of our feelings, holding on to every single one, and try to wait out the storm without letting any of those feelings go. If we could just get out of our lives for a moment and breathe, we'd be able to make it through. And then we come back, it's still there. But it's worse, too, because the problem has grown in our absence. It's gone from the proverbial molehill to a mountain all on its own. Now the circumstance is still there, and these old feelings return, and we just want to escape again. When does the cycle end? Well, it's not our fault. If only this hadn't happened, or this person hadn't done this. And like David points out, we could look to our circumstances. Well, we were wronged. Why is all this happening to us? Did we do something and God's punishing us? Now, we've covered before how God feels about punishing us in previous episodes, so I won't revisit those, but y'all, that's just not how God works. Well, Lord, if you could just fix my circumstances, this was done to me, that was done to me. And we buy right into this victim mentality that seems to be the song of the blues that the world wants to sing over and over. Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. Yes, the strong gets more, while the weak ones fade. Once I lived the life of a millionaire, spending my money without care. Then I began to fall so low I lost my good friends and had nowhere to go. Nobody knows when you're down and out. Well, all of my problems are the fault of a demographic, economics. It's because of where I live. It's because of how I live. It's because what I have to live with. And you don't know what it's like to be me. It's a woeful tale for sure. I just can't seem to get out of this rut. You know, David lived in strife most of his life. Ups and downs. Saul hunting him. Betrayals haunting him. There weren't many years where someone wasn't looking to kill him. He wasn't ignorant of it. He knew what his circumstances were. Day and night, violence and strife were looking for a way to cause him sorrow. Well, I can't seem to overcome this thing in my life. It's easy to look around and say, how can I get past everything that's happening around us, around me? War and rumors of wars. We've got civil unrest, not to mention the worry of the upcoming elections. How are they going to go? What new circumstances will we find ourselves in? What quote unquote king will assume the throne? And when we bring it to a more personal level, how can I make more time to serve God, study His Word, talk to Him, when I can't even get my head above water in my daily circumstances? The life He's given me with all its blessings is the life keeping me from those very things. It seems like the only time I do pray are when my circumstances overwhelm me and I finally perceive I need some help. And even then, I only pray for a change in my circumstances. Our circumstances can just as easily govern how we handle trials and the struggles of this life as our feelings and the gnawing desire to escape. At times, our circumstances become the reigning force that drives our feelings and make us want to escape. We weren't prepared for Christian life to be this hard. We expected, well, we don't really know what we expected, but not to struggle like this, not trials like this, not life like this. God was going to fix it, wasn't He? Y'all, that's not His promise. That's a false promise that the adversary, the devil, wants you to believe. Because when we start thinking like that, we start feeling a certain way. We start blaming our circumstances on God, and we start wanting to escape this blessed life that we find ourselves in. David says, "As for me, I will call upon my God, and Jehovah will deliver me." I've called on him before, and he's done it before. He gave me peace in those moments, and he'll do it again. This is what God has promised. So many times we expect the deliverance to take us away from the issue or free us of the problem. But the deliverance comes in the peace we get from our Father in heaven. God didn't pull David out of the battle for his life in the years that he was being chased by Saul. What he did do when David called on him was comfort David in the turmoil and give David a peace despite his circumstances. He took the feelings of doubt and fear, of the anxiety of constantly being on the run, and he gave David peace. And David didn't say that he hoped God would save him when he called upon him. He said that God would save him. But he also accepted that God would deliver him in God's way from the trial, not necessarily the way he wanted to be delivered or the way he expected to be delivered. It's easy for us to think, well, I thought if I called on God that he would just magically fix my marriage. Well, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but calling on God to help in your marriage may, and most likely does, mean that if you put in the work the way he's prescribed it in his word, that he will give you peace so that he can work in your marriage. Again, don't ignore a harmful situation, but if this is about how you feel in your marriage, if there is reconciliation that is possible, put aside your quick fix expectations of God and let him give you peace and begin to work. Well, God is a healer. Why couldn't he just take this disease or sickness away from me? That's not what he promised. How he works is to give you peace that he has you. He can comfort you. He can work in the minds of your doctors to diagnose, prescribe, and do the things that doctors do. He didn't promise us deliverance in this life. He promises peace. True deliverance from this life comes only in death or in his return for the believer. In this life, we're going to move from one trial to another. The trials are not going to stop happening. Y'all, they're going to come as surely as the rising of the sun. Christ affirmed we would struggle and promised peace. In John 16:33, he says, "These things have I spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." And in verse 22 of Psalm 55, David gives us the best advice of the whole chapter. "Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved." And here's another way we could read that verse. Cast your burden on Jehovah, and he will hold you up. He will never let the righteous fall and waste away. You know, that verse doesn't say he's going to hold up our burden. It says he's going to hold us up. You know, when Jesus says to take his yoke upon us, we've got to understand the concept of a yoke. A yoke fastens two animals together to pull or carry a burden in unison. If one animal is stronger than the other, the yoke allows them to pull the weight, the load, or the burden together. The weaker animal is still able to move forward because of the strength of the stronger animal. Jesus doesn't want to remove our burdens or carry our burdens the way we expect. He wants to help us bear the load of our burdens, not carry them for us. And that is where we find peace. We're never alone. As we struggle with unruly children, we can find peace in God because we're never alone. As we struggle in our marriage, we can find peace in an almighty God because we're never alone. And as we struggle with our health or a diagnosis, we can have peace because we're never alone. Our job, our family, our house, our car, our neighbor, our spiritual life, these can all be a struggle. And sometimes just some of them are a struggle, and sometimes all of them are a struggle. But in the struggle, we can have peace. We can be delivered to peace, even if we're not delivered from the situation. We can cast our cares upon him, and he'll carry the load with us. He's so much stronger than we are, and he can and will carry but what we can't. But we've got to let him. He won't force peace upon us, but we can find it in him. He'll never let us fall into the mire and remain there. He won't let the world have us. Beloved, we're his. When in affliction's valley, I tread the road of care. My Savior helps me carry my cross so heavy to bear. Though all around me is darkness and earthly joys are flown, my Savior whispers his promise, never to leave me alone. No, never alone. No, never alone. He promised never to leave me, never to leave me alone. Thanks for walking with me a while as we read the word together. Won't you join me again next week, and we'll walk just a little further. If you like the podcast, go ahead and hit that follow button. If you have any questions about salvation or general podcast questions, reach out to us via email at podcast@lakeworthbaptist.org. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram and Facebook by looking for LWBC_publications.